All right, here we are. We're looking towards Courtenay, British Columbia. So that puts us on the other side of the main mountain range, the Beaufort range. And home is exactly that way, so is the timber. I don't think I can drive any further that way. Maybe some other different branches of the logging road I could, but I've never been around here ever before. It's kind of frustrating at first, but that's how you learn, right? You gotta go look. And I'm avidly looking just in case maybe I might get lucky and draw a draw tag for elk here this year. It'll be something else. What do we got? So I got a message from, I'll have to share it at home though. Wait, now I got one in here. Well, this is a long one. 2 of them. All right. But I got another email back from the timber cruisers from northern BC, northern Alberta. And they have a lot to share, and I asked them yesterday, we're trying to make plans for me to go down there and go in the woods with them. And they said I could share everything. And that's a lot, so I'll probably do that later on today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know what this is about, but let's read this right now. Hey man, ho again. I just heard you read my email and I realized I failed to send any real details about any of my experiences that I'd meant to put on here. My first experience as a child on our farm adjacent to the nuclear reactor patterns. I actually typed it out on here and didn't send it, then lost it on this phone somehow. I don't know if having my first experience on our farm is the reason they marked me, or is because I have Cherokee in me, or just stayed in the woods most of my life. I'm almost 59 years young now. First experience happening between 4 and 6 years old on our farm that joined 10,000 acres of a nuclear reactor that's now closed down. The Sabe people are still there though. And a different experience is one about how you mentioned you wonder what would happen if you said F you and threw rocks back. Do not, I repeat, do not do that because they don't like that shit at all. Back before I knew what I was dealing with, I'd done that while cussing them, thinking it was humans, and found out the hard way they don't like that. A lot of the following is describing what led up to Sabe throwing rocks and surrounding camp. And our camp was surrounded by what sounded like hundreds of Sabe people of all ages, meaning different tones from low pitch to high pitch. From just outside of our camp to open area along the Etowah riverbank where Shoal Creek runs into the Etowah River, Etowah being a Cherokee Indian name meaning the driftwood place. The camp was about a 30-yard by 30-yard open area where two men were found in the same spot on different occasions, one of which was a turkey hunter, not long after our encounter, locked inside of the trucks after committing suicide. I reckon the Sabe people surrounded them is why they killed themselves, like the guy that killed himself in his home that was demolished. The head game warden retired shortly thereafter, stating he didn't sign on to searching for dead people that killed themselves or had been murder victims. The government had a blockade constructed with cables and chain link fence while the reactor was active at this spot and is within a few hundred yards of the now flooded 3 to 4 story underground buildings used as part of the government's facility operations for the reactor. Also, the cold water of the river to cool the nuclear stuff down, in which now has been fenced in. The entrance to that particular building was a tunnel big enough to drive a vehicle into, where I believe the Sabe might be using as one of their dwellings, because the government blocked off the entrance and something or someone went below the blockade and dug their way into the tunnel more than once. They also put a tall chain link fence around a few acres there. Take into account, all the entrances were guarded by soldiers with machine guns while the reactor was active. It was called Lockheed, now Dawson Forest. A couple people came up missing in that area with their vehicles being found nearby, never to be seen again. There were 4 of us in camp full time, having other friends join in a few times on that trip, in which we spent about a week putting out bank hooks for catfish. Remember, I'm no writer, and you'll probably need to edit some, because during proofreading I realized I was probably too descriptive, and I've jumped around telling you this encounter that happened around 93. But I thought bloodline could have something to do with me being marked. Read description of activities if you want to. You might want to skip on down. My great-grandpa that had passed down how to catch the bait and set out hooks to my father when he was a boy. Then my grandpa and father taught me. My great-grandpa was at least a half Cherokee. His wife, full-blooded Cherokee. His ancestor, a young boy, being found hidden in a cave during the roundup of the Trail of Tears in nearby Dahlonega, Cherokee word meaning yellow rock home of America's first gold rush. The way we went about it was baiting the hooks at least twice daily, going up and down the river, the fish off around daylight, and rebaiting as we retrieved the catch. And just before dark, going up and down the river using a John boat with a small outboard motor, running the hooks around midnight and resting in between then and daylight. Throughout the week, we'd been cleaning fish during the day, throwing the skins, guts, etc. up into the briar/laurel thickets across the river. I know, stupid wild critter sabe, bear, possum, coon, etc. attracted. And of course we've been eating them and storing the fish in coolers, as well as placing them in barrels with holes drilled in them in the river so the current would flow through and keep them alive. The last night we were there, we had some people come over hooting and hollering and playing loud rock and roll, including pretty little gals and a young fellow in which I found disrespectful to the young ladies and forced him to leave, which will come into play later, in which one of the gals left with anyway. After most of the people left, other than the original 4, the other 3 not admitting it in front of the others afterward, and no longer associating with me after I brought it up in front of the others, who laughed and ridiculed, another pattern. Anyway, things were winding down with music low, and suddenly rocks were being thrown into camp, from golf ball size to not much smaller than baseballs. I thought it was the chicken shit, disrespectful punk throwing them, and immediately started picking them up and throwing them back in the same direction, as hard as I could, while cussing, challenging him or whoever it was throwing the rocks to come into camp and settle it like men. I don't know if I hit some of the Sabe people or what, but the following morning we woke up only to be surrounded by whoops in which we'd never heard of at that time. I was sleeping in the back of my pickup on an army cot with a .357 Magnum as a pillow, and was awoken up by a few of the loud whoops starting off from the south, working their way all around us, building up to hundreds for miles around. All of us woken up by this and laid there quietly and listened horrified, enough not to try to see what was making the noise. All of us strangely falling back to sleep, missing our daylight hook run. Patterns. When we woke up, we packed up camp and drove down to the reactor, where we'd had to abandon the boat the night before because of the water pump stopping. Coincidence? I don't know. Anyway, we floated down the river to a place where we could get the boat out easier, having driven my truck down there, and left it to haul the boat and drove back up to get it for the float out, gathering our fish and lines as we went. No punctuation, sorry. Sorry for the screwed up order of writing it down. And as I said, I'm no writer. And I've got many more encounters beginning from age 4 to 6 years old, one in which my dog pushed me with her nose, staying in between the sabe and the briar thicket, and me growling at the sabe, as well as experiences on a management area that also has an active airborne ranger military base on it and no longer has a management area hunting access. Thanks again for everything you do, you and Sarah do, and P.S. I know you're a popular, busy man, but if you ever get in the North Georgia mountains, I know a few good places around here for whitetail and wild turkey. I was so excited the first time I had a gobbler responding, putting on the full show that I about choked to death on a diaphragm call, before I turned him backwards. Turned him a backwards flip of my Mossberg 3.5 inch 12 gauge, my friend. Peace out. All right, man. Gotcha. I got a second email from you underneath that one. Should I read it now or wait till later? Okay, one more. I'll read the other one now. Hey Steve, I'm a disabled hunter, knower, outdoorsman, custom log home specialist, lifelong construction worker that's been fishing and hunting ever since I could sit on someone's shoulders. I've been watching your channel daily since I first found it in 2019. I really do appreciate all the time you put into this topic. I myself don't really give a flying F whether you share my name or not, but out of respect for my kids, please don't. Oh, I read this one. I read that one. Why didn't I read the other one? Alright. Weird, huh? Unless, I don't know, whatever. Alright, well, I read that one just the other day. So there we go. There we go. Moving on. We're going to go back down below, take another road up to the right, look for some elks. If that doesn't pan out, I'm going to go back down to where we were the other day and dive into this one big patch of mature timber and see if that makes a difference. And then I might crack this open again. Down on the timber. We'll see. I'll be back in a minute. Well, we just went up this logging road here. It boxed out up in the head of that valley. Wasn't too much of an exciting view from there, so I passed and whipping the camera out. But now as we turn around, the fog has cleared enough that I can show you guys looking towards mainland British Columbia from this side of Vancouver Island. There it is. Over there you're going to see community of Seashell. Gibson's to the right, like farther down to the right. Powell River farther up. Not much wind in that ocean today. There you go. Showed ya. Okay, we made it back. Hold on a minute. What are we at? We're the 30th today or something, I think. Sunday the 30th of March. Another day. And I hope everybody did something fun today or yesterday. I really, really hope so. So, what did we do today? We took the adventure dog and we went up into some logging roads. They opened up a gate for the weekends, I guess, near this area. We're near the Horn Lake Caves. If you Google that up, not too far from there, up in the mountains there. And I'm still trying to learn the area. I don't have a clue where the bulls winter around there, but they're around there somewhere, and there's some real big ones. So all it takes is time, right? You got to grind it out and look. And I don't have anybody to hold my hand and show me. And I don't ask anybody either. I can't do it. I'll figure it out. Excuse me. So we went up to Lookout. I showed you guys some video from there. I share a video from there, actually. You'll see it. And then later on, we went up to another zone, and I filmed a little bit more, and I'll share that with you along the way here. And then we went for a bit of a walk through a big patch of timber at the end. Found a bit of elk sign, but no bulls. Weird. And I'm right where they rut their faces off, too. But anyway, I got the green light to share a bunch of stuff from our timber cruisers, which I'm stoked to do. And I was going to do that today, but now I remember, I left this book out yesterday, Bobby's book, had a particular title, and I'm going to carry on with that right now, right? From the late, great Bobby Short. She had another entry here titled Bluff Charging. Back in the mid-1990s, when I was interacting with former Los Angeles Deputy Sheriff Captain Tom Akron and his wife, Marie, he had an interesting story. The narrative was about a silver miner who made camp in Glen Gowen in the Matzatzal Mountains in Maricopa and Gila County, Arizona.
His story is a lengthy one and dated back 78 years or more, when mining silver was a successful venture in and around the Tonto National Forest. The behavior I noted for this purpose stemmed from an incident that occurred on the trail going up and out of a steep canyon ravine en route to the Globe stagecoach line to Phoenix, which came through only once a month. The miner packed up his team of 9 mules with ore and was single filing his mule team up and out of the steep canyon on a very narrow trail, when suddenly a Sasquatch jumped in front of his mule team, coming face to face with the startled miner. The Sasquatch, Aiken reported, stood his ground on the trail, waving his arms, and wouldn't move. In the first story I heard him tell, the male Sasquatch waved his arms violently to what appeared to be a bluff charge, stamping his foot forward several times on the ground and wouldn't let the mules go any further. Tom Akron. There must have been a reason for this peculiar behavior, but whatever it was escaped me, unless it was for the amusement of the Sasquatch or the protection of others. Perhaps young Sasquatches ahead on the trail, unseen by the miner. To see a Sasquatch child is rare. We see their tracks in the snow, but according to the data, we never see the little ones. This bluff charging is echoed in other stories told by hikers who talk about Bigfoot-like beings jumping out on a trail, blocking their only route. Senior Bigfooter, author Will Jebning, and I were reminiscing about some of the antics by the late Renee Hinden late one night. I've never laughed so hard in my life. Will goes way back, knew Renee long before some of the current claims. Some of the older crowd in research will remember Will's Bigfoot newsletters and notes from the field. Anyway, in the course of that exchange, Jebning related a story that involved a bit of a bluff charging behavior by a Sasquatch, and I asked him for permission to tell it. Again, he graciously agreed, and here it is in Will's own words. Hugh Brown's encounter was, I think, one of the more interesting ones I have investigated. The man I met on the logging road, one Kevin Gerdy, had known Hugh for a number of years and said he was a very honest man. Kevin told Hugh that he should go to a location in northern Oregon, not far from the Bridge of the Gods at Wyeth. This is just across the Columbia River from Stevenson, Washington. Sorry, guys, been a long day. I'll get going in here. I'll get going smoother one more time. Holy shit. This is just across the Columbia River from Stevenson, Washington. Kevin told Hugh he had seen steam vents and that Hugh should go and check them out. What Kevin had mistaken for volcanic steam vents were just rotting debris from a covered-up logging landing. When it got cold and wet, the heat vaporized the water and seeped into the debris pile underground, emitting steam from surface openings. One day, Hugh and a friend of his, Jeff Stroff, went there. They walked after driving as far as they could to the spot and saw where a small amount of steam came out of a small opening in the ground. They stood there for a few moments and were about to leave when they heard a roar from downslope from the edge of a ridge where they stood. They kept hearing this roar periodically, and it sounded as if whatever was making it was coming up the hill in their direction. It kept getting closer and louder. When it sounded like it was just below them, they caught a glimpse of it, and at first thought it was a bear. It then went into the brush. Jeff took off with the car, not wanting to be there if a bear decided to come after them. Hugh stayed a few moments longer, hoping to catch a glimpse of that animal again, saying he didn't think it quite looked like a bear. And a few seconds later, a deer burst out of the brush and ran right to Hugh. It stopped close enough he could have touched it. He said it acted very scared. The deer suddenly took off running out of sight, and then this huge creature came out near where the deer appeared, and when it saw Hugh, it ran right at him. Hugh said he must have been in shock because he froze there. The creature ran toward Hugh, being downslope from him, stopping just 15 or 20 feet in front of and slightly below Hugh. It stood there staring at Hugh and Hugh back at it. Then, after what Hugh estimated later to be around 20 seconds or so, it turned to its right and casually walked off into the forest and out of sight. Hugh then ran for the car and told Jeff what had happened while they got out of the area. And Hugh said he thought he was a dead man. He knew he was coming to get him. He thought perhaps it was competing with him over the deer. Who knows? Maybe it was. But the mock charge was very interesting behavior to me. Sasquatch behavior is one of my favorite parts of all this. Will Jevning, 2012. Huh. Scary shit. And the next entry is called trail blocking or herding. I hesitate to call this next story bluff charging. To me, it's more like herding or lack of a better word. Trail blocking behavior, but I'll relate the story and you'll judge it. It's a great story, and true as told to Oregon's senior investigator Cliff Olson by the Estacada police chief's son, Robin, as he sat in the dining room doing homework. Young Les told his dad, and Bob, what had happened to him and his friends up at the Clackamas River. This all came down some years before the 1967 Patterson film clip was made public. It was a time when the Mount Hood National Forest was logging big time, causing a great deal of Bigfoot activity due to the noise of the machinery and the disturbance. Les Kay was public works foreman for Estacada, Oregon. This particular Saturday, he planned to take his kid fishing on the North Fork of the Clackamas River above Estacada. They loaded up and headed out. He didn't want to hike upstream to his favorite fishing area, so he chose to drive up Laddie Road and hike a trail to the canyon breaks and then down the slope to the North Fork and spend the day fishing. They drove to where they could take a trail to the breaks, and headed toward the canyon. They parked about a third of a mile from the lip of the canyon and then downslope another half a mile or so to the stream. They hiked through the heavy timber, almost to the breaks, where they saw the big timber thinning. They knew they were almost there. Suddenly, a very large male Sasquatch stepped out onto the trail just in front of them and just stood there glaring at them. The appearance of the creature and its huge size sent the kids into hysterics. They'd been in the lead on the trail, and just that quick, they were behind their dad, screaming and hollering and tugging on his clothes, scared to death. The creature just stood there, as Les struggled with himself and his kids to gain some composure and head them back up the trail. As they were about to head back up the trail to the car, the creature started walking toward them, adding to their need to vacate the area. The children wouldn't head out by themselves. Instead, they just clustered near their dad, slowing their progress on the trail. I guess so. The Sasquatch advanced on them to the point that Les, in his fright and concern, using the only tool he had, a 7-foot fly pole, shaking the tip of the rod in the creature's chest as he walked backwards up the trail. Holy shit. He continued this until the creature stopped, which was just a few feet from their pickup truck. The creature stood there as they clambered in the truck and left. Les drove straight home, dropped off his kids, and then drove to the police chief's home to tell him what he just experienced. Bob W. could tell Les was really rattled and had him sit down. Les was not a drinking man, a complete teetotaler. But when Bob W. offered Les a drink to settle his nerves, he took a big one. Cliff Olson, Oregon. And then Bobby carries on to say, incredibly, this is a true story. And in the process of relating the story to me, Cliff figured the big hairy guy was probably a guard for his family or others that were somewhere on the canyon slope picking berries, gathering roots, or perhaps fishing. He did not want them in his area and meant them no harm if they left. That was obvious. I'd call this behavior in ushering them back to the vehicle unusual. Thanks, Cliff, for relating this great story. This was behavior 1. This was a behavior I'd not heard before. Next entry, Peeping Toms. There have been many notations in the database that described a Sasquatch looking through windows, not only of remote cabins, but in rural residential areas. One such incident was described by a woman living on a reservation. Large footprints were found all around the soft soil under a bedroom window, indicating something shoeless and very large watched the family inside at some point the previous night. The reservation police, along with forestry, tracked the creature into the nearby woods, but the Sasquatch was never found. One of the elders asked that I not identify them or the individual. A Montana resident wrote in 1997 to report that he observed a Sasquatch watching the family through a living room window. He phoned his neighbor, who ran out the door and fired twice into the air to scare it off. The next night, however, the persistent Sasquatch was back, peeping through windows. J. Mellon. That's some creepy shit too, right? It would be creepy to have anybody peeping in the window, human or non-human or big human, whatever, doesn't matter. Orange-haired peeping Tom in the Catskills. Next entry. Brian from Delaware County, New York, had an unusual sighting. Quote, "One night after 9 o'clock, my sister and I sat at the kitchen table eating sandwiches for dinner while my parents had cocktails in the front living room. The kitchen was at the rear of the house, and the kitchen windows faced a drop-off in property elevation which ran down to a clear running stream. As I was eating my dinner, I was gazing out the window. It was a dark, overcast and moonless October night, and looking out the window, which was 12 feet from where I was sitting, there, illuminated from the light spilling out of the kitchen, was a huge, ape-like face staring back at me. It had a broad, wide face with no discernible neck and shoulders that spread out beyond the 4-foot-wide window. Huge. The brow of the creature was heavy, and I do not recall any expression on the creature's face. It was clearly a Bigfoot." That'd be a holy shit moment. But what was different from any description that I heard before about a Bigfoot was that the hair of this creature was more orange-like, not brown or black. My father and I took flashlights and went outside to look for it, but the ground was hard due to the cold autumn that year. What we did realize was that the creature would have to be over 9 feet tall for its face to be visible through the window at the kitchen, since the basement level was exposed at that part of the house as the farmhouse was built into a hill. 2 weeks later, we read a local newspaper article in which a farmer said he spotted a big hairy creature breaking into his hen house stealing chickens. The color of this creature's hair? Orange. Brian. Whew. Peeking in the window is a shitty one. Real shitty. It's a lot of confidence too, right? Oh man, the elk have been stomping this one in, haven't they? Yeah. Look at that.
It's so pretty in here.
Yeah. We get to scan all the sides. Look at this one coming in. Look at this one forking. Okay, what's in here? Come on, Bubs. Oh yeah.
This must be the main one, yeah?
Yeah, there's a couple in here. This way. It's all over in here. So, yeah.
at this trail. There's nothing like this up top.
Feels more peaceful down here than up there.
Yeah, it's not too bad, is it?
This feels like that calming.
Now, what are they doing in here? They're bedding in here somewhere, aren't they? Come on. Come on. This way.
All right, here we go again. Another one from Bobby. This is titled The Owens-Harriot Story. Harriet Story. When I reread the rather famous account Daryl Owen and Scott Harriet told, so many years ago, about their encounter with the Sasquatch, I imagined the Sasquatch they saw was doing a bit of this same hiding behavior, trying to stay away from the twosome. I couldn't figure out who was more afraid, the Sasquatch trying to hide from the approach by these two guys, or Daryl and Scott at seeing it. The story was far funnier to hear Scott tell it. Reading it doesn't do it any justice. But it was a fun read in the 90s, drawing from part of their story as the following. On October 12, 1992, Bigfoot hunters of the day, Daryl Owen and Scott Harriet, ventured into the woods near the mouth of the Klamath River, armed only with their video cameras, their goal to capture the image of a Bigfoot. The incident occurred in Del Norte, California, near Requa. Requa? It wasn't long before they got lucky. Of course, in hindsight, calling their encounter lucky may be a matter of opinion from other point of view. Once deep in the bush, and when they actually got close enough to realize what they were looking at, they found the Sasquatch positioned low in the bushes, lying prone on the ground, hiding, as the fearless duo blundered into his hiding place. The photos that emerged from that day had the outline of the body and the eyes that so terrified Owen that all I could say was the F word repeatedly and many times since. Forgive me, I don't know why after all this time I found this funny, but here's a small part of the tape-recorded dialogue that transpired between Daryl and Harriet. Daryl holding the camcorder. Quote, "All right, I'm recording right now. Can you see that little thing? It looks like maybe an eye. F, it's a pair of eyes. He's looking right at me." Their two voices rising in tempo to high octave soprano. "Yeah?" Harriet responds, "Holy shit, that's an effing Sasquatch, man." The voices are wild. "I got it on effing tape." Owen's voice screaming in high-pitched tone. "I can't effing believe it." Voice even higher and trembling with terror. "He's looking right back at us." High squealing voice. I think I might have seen this video on VHS back in the day. That outlines the scene. You get the picture. Nobody left a scene faster with camera in hand than Daryl Owen did that day in complete terror. I phoned Scott in Los Angeles one night in 1996 to hear the story from him personally. His roommate answered the phone, and when I asked for Scott, his reply in serious alarm was, "Oh no, not again. I have to hear this story again? Oh no, spare me, not again." He went on to explain how many times he had to listen to Harriet retell his encounter. Then, with intermittent laughter and frustration, resignated, he handed the phone over to Sasquatchery's handsome, funny man Scott Harriet. It was a great story for its time, and I don't think there's been one like it since. Probably never will be. There was nothing funny about their terror. Daryl, of course, never returned to the Bigfoot arena again. Their encounter made television A&E's Ancient Mysteries Bigfoot, a television series that aired in 1994, and the Learning Channel's The Quest Bigfoot. End of story. I think I remember that. That was two guys, and for the life of me, I couldn't see nothing because the guy was in an interview pointing down the bushes. It almost looked like Shalal, I think. He goes, "See, there's the toes, there's the foot." And I remember looking at it thinking, where? I can't see shit. I can see something's in there. I'm frantically looking, trying to figure out what they're looking at because there's no rewind back then, right? Or a replay on the television. Random luck, right? For them. Next entry, disguised as a tree stump. Phew, said how many people? We were camping in Northern California on the coast, spending time in Arcata and Crescent City. We went inland to camp, but not sure exactly where we were. I only moved to California from Brooklyn about a year ago, so big trees and salmon-filled rivers are new to me. The incident occurred the first week of October 2003. In the late afternoon, the three of us ate and were scrambling for some firewood. It was late in the season and the area had been picked clean. We fanned out and I started away from the creek, heading into the deep woods. I looked around and saw large trees and a few big stumps. And suddenly, one of the stumps seemed to disappear. I was about 25 yards from it, and I could swear that a large redwood stump moved. I went in the direction of it, and I saw a man walking away deeper into the woods, and I saw him for about 10 seconds. I yelled out, but all I got was a whistle. I could tell he was big because another stump he walked by was later measured at about 6 feet tall, and he was at least a foot taller than the stump. It was evening, but the light was not gone completely. I thought he seemed to be wearing bulky dark clothing. I didn't get a clear view of anything except his silhouette, and I whistled, and I got a reply of a similar whistle. But if it was him, he had already moved a couple of yards further away. Only in the morning did one of my friends mention Bigfoot. We followed what we assumed to be his path, but there was no sign of a campsite anywhere near there or any human activity at all. The woods just got deeper. Who knows? It was cool, though. Was the stump Bigfoot? RG. Yeah, well, so far, how many people seen the stump moving or the tree moving up the slope?
Still remember mine down there behind that stump, hearing it screaming,
Yeah.
and just seeing antlers.
Isn't it exciting?
Well, it was so surreal because it was, what were we on, day 12 of nothing?
That's so funny. Any seasoned hunters heard you say that, they'd be laughing.
Why?
Really? 12 days?
Really?
Bubs, what is it? What is it? Nothing? Mitch's never even shot an elk.
So 12 days really isn't a long time.
No.
That's a long time for me.
Come on.
Oh, I had to camp this time too. I hadn't camped any more than 2 nights, 3 days ever.
Then he started crying. I don't want to go home without my elk. This way, bub. This way. I guess that's a trail. Okay, yeah, you're going. You're good. You got it. Look out. There's not really any fresh tracks in here either.
There's not?
Not yet. Come here, this way. Nope, not swimming. Come on.
Okay, here's a weird title. Sasquatch, Adoptive Parenting, ? Guttural Sounds. In July 2001, my friend Ken Christian, a resident of beautiful Stewart Island, British Columbia, sent along a news article with testimony from a Vancouver dentist by the name of Dr. Arthur Gostin. He told the most amazing story I think I've ever heard or read. The doctor went camping in the Rockies with his family and was awakened. Hold on a minute. Awakened by the frantic cries of his 12-year-old daughter, who told him a wild boy was stealing their food. Excuse me. To Dr. Gostin's complete astonishment, he recalled for me the following, quote, I looked where she was pointing and saw this half-naked boy slinking off into the trees with an armful of canned goods. Shouting after the boy, Dr. Gostin gave chase and caught up with him at the edge of the clearing. And I couldn't believe my eyes. The boy was standing next to an enormous, hairy, man-like creature at least 8 feet tall. The giant took some of the boy's load, then they ambled off together into the woods, both of them walking with the same hunched-over walk. Whoa. Since the Gostin sighting, at least 33 people have reported seeing the naked wild boy and his hairy companion. Witnesses include clergymen, forest rangers, and even members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The report went on to mention the unlikely duo had been heard exchanging guttural sounds as if talking to each other, and they said the youngster had all the earmarks of a feral human. A few investigators of the day in Vancouver believe the wild boy sightings may be connected to the 1989 crash of a private plane carrying a family of French tourists visiting the region. According to the report filled by the RCMP, the pilot and the passengers were all killed, including a young mother listed on the manifest as Madeleine Deschure. Her tiny infant son Marcel was missing. His remains were never found. In any part of the story the dentist told her, if any part of the story the dentist told her true, it is a remarkable account of an infant being rescued and raised by a Sasquatch family. At this writing, the child would be an adult and undoubtedly given to the Sasquatch way of life. The ramifications of a human newborn being raised as a wild Sasquatch are interesting to contemplate. It reminds me of the instances Dr. Ed Fouche wrote about and the possible interbreeding between the captive Colville Indian women and local Sasquatch husbands. The French adoptee, however, is the reverse. Now, as an adult human male living the only life he knows with the primitive ones, would he take a Sasquatch wife? Would he be foolish not to think that highly probable? Would the children of the union be haired? Many questions arise. Apparently, when Dr. Gostin saw the feral boy, he was still under the tutelage and watchful eye of a large male Sasquatch. Stories like this are indeed rare, but fascinating to read. This account I found astonishing. And here is the news article published in the Vancouver Sun regarding the wild child story. Oh, no way. May 19, 2000, Vancouver, Canada. Excited researchers are combing the wilds of BC in response to recent sightings of Bigfoot accompanied by a blonde-haired boy. More than two dozen people have claimed to see the human youngster dressed in animal skins and loping along beside the towering man-beast. Investigators speculate that the mystery boy may be the missing survivor of a plane crash that occurred in the area 11 years ago, raised from childhood by Bigfoot. And this is the most tantalizing development in Bigfoot research to take place in decades, said Dr. Rob Warrior, Ph.D., a zoologist involved in the hunt for the elusive forest creature. It suggests that Bigfoot is not some shambling monster as he is often depicted, but a gentle and intelligent being capable of nurturing behavior and compassion. Dentist Dr. Arthur Gostin, who was camping in the Rockies with his family, first spotted the boy, described the eyewitnesses as lean and wiry, with long matted hair in late March. The Vancouver man was awakened in the early morning by the frantic cries of his 12-year-old daughter. When he emerged from his tent, he saw her pointing into the woods. She said that a wild boy was stealing our food, Dr. Gostin recalls. I looked where she was pointing and I saw this half-naked boy slinking up into the trees with an armful of canned goods. Shouting after the child, Dr. Gostin gave chase and caught up with him at the edge of the clearing. I couldn't believe my eyes. The boy was standing next to an enormous hairy man-like creature at least 8 feet tall. Dr. Gostin said, the thing took some of the boy's load, then they ambled off together into the woods, both of them walking with the same hunched-over, ape-like stride. Since that sighting, at least 33 people have reported seeing the wild boy and his hairy companion. Witnesses have included clergymen. Okay, we already read that. All right, we read that too in the beginning. Hold on. In many cases, the mismatched duo has been heard exchanging guttural sounds as if talking. This youngster has all the earmarks of a feral child. A child that has had no human contact and has been raised by an animal, said the Seattle-based Dr. Warrior. The fact that his gait is similar to the Bigfoot and that they can communicate is evidence that the creature is his surrogate parent. Researchers believe that the wild boy sightings may be connected to the 1989 crash of a private plane carrying a party of French tourists visiting the region. The crash left the pilot and 4 passengers dead, including the mother, Madeleine Dessure. Madeleine's baby Marcel was missing, and the remains of the 1-year-old infant were never found. Crazy.
Bubs. Dead ender. Come here. So that road we walked off of is coming up. Okay. Careful on this log. Bump. This way. This way. This way. Can't take us through there. Ruby. I'm gonna break a leg in here. Let's head her out there on the road. I wonder if every time she comes out, she's like, okay, is this, we're gonna go get a dead animal? Oh man, you'd never get any more exciting than that for a dog. Coming up on it alive. Yep, smelling all the blood and the energy with me.
Man, I might have to cut this one short. I'm starting to talk myself into sleep. Long day. And I could just keep reading forever, but it's kind of knocking me out. And I've got to get some stuff done because I'm going to get up at 4:30 tomorrow and head back into the mountains with the dog. Man, Bobby spent so much time, didn't she? She spent so much time investigating these people. Oh, here's the title. I'll read this one. Horse killed by Bigfoot. Ugh, my worst nightmare. One of them. Russ Spence put me onto a story from Tom Hernandez. Told him that happened in Wyoming. We don't hear much from hunters, hikers, and riders up in that part of the country very often, so I was delighted to have his story come my way in December 2011. The report spoke to the issue of aggressiveness with horses. Trimming the account down to just the behavior of the Sasquatch, Hernandez wrote, I was 13 at the time. We saw it at my grandfather's place near Boulder Flats area in Fremont County, Wyoming, near Lander. The creature jumped up on the road next to us. I was on a horse that stood 16 hands, and I was a little over 6 foot, and I had to look up at this guy. Bracket, a horse that is 16 hands high is approximately 5'3" at the withers. With head raised, the horse is actually taller. A hand is 4 inches. 16 hands times 4 is 64 inches. A rider seated in the saddle who is over 6 feet tall having to look up at the Sasquatch would probably put the Sasquatch in the 8 to 9 foot or much taller range. Quote, he was only about 4 or 5 feet from me. I got a pretty good look at him. He ran the same direction we were running. Not sure if it was chasing us, but I didn't feel a real sense of the Bigfoot trying to harm us. It scared me, of course, but if it wanted to, it could have grabbed either one of us right from the start. Anyway, that night, something killed and carried a 2-year-old horse that we were working with and carried it up to the house. Only 3 of the horse's legs... What? Only 3 of the horse's legs drugged the ground. Left it by the water trough and took off. The dogs tracked it to the mountains, and the police sheriff's officer got plaster cast of the tracks, and that was that. It made the papers and Salt Lake City News. Some of my students even found the newspaper story on the internet. I am a believer, but not as sure as I once was. Okay, one more. Bigfoot attacks horse and rider. Ugh, that would suck. Diane Stocking filed a 1974 report of an incident that occurred in Douglasville, Georgia. It involved a young 18-year-old woman who had been riding cross-country endurance training sessions for a local rancher since she was age 14. This particular day, the rider was training a 16.5 hands high black Arabian stallion. Stallions, regardless of the breed, are notorious for being strong-willed, high-spirited, easily spooked, and often difficult to handle. The young woman must have been a very accomplished rider to have had the skills and know-how. Oops, hold on. The skills and know-how to handle a young stallion on the endurance ride. On this day, she was 20 miles into the woods on a dirt road when she crossed a bridge that snaked into an S-curve road. Instantly, the rider heard something, then a loud shrill scream. Something jumped out at her and the stallion from the side, panicking both rider and stallion. Whatever it was massive and human-looking and had hair all over its body. It jumped out, grabbing the back end of the horse and the rear of the saddle. That would suck. A flash struggle ensued between the horse and the perceived Bigfoot. The rider testified she threw herself around the stallion's neck for lack of a saddle horn and hung on as the panicked horse took off in a wild run. It was not known if the ranch owner believed the woman's story, but the scratched saddle told the story. What a horrifying encounter. I don't have another similar behavior in the records quite like this one, but the conduct of the Sasquatch was not all that unusual. If it wasn't outright aggression, perhaps a bit of fun going wrong. Diane Stocking. All right, there you go. I'm gonna stop. I'm done. It's been a long day. Maybe it's too warm in here now, actually. The sun's on the window this time of day, and it's just starting to knock me out. I better get moving. Get my stuff down to get my gear ready to go again so I can get out of here tomorrow morning by 5. And I'm going to take everybody with me. And hopefully it's going to be a exciting, action-packed day. Oh, man. I got to get some Z's bad. Anyway, Sarah's store still has her sale still on right now for one of these. This one's on sale. This is a good hat. I like that one. And the other one, which I think she stole back from my desk. Sneaky. She's learning. she's on to me. She's getting my stashes. Huh. Anyway, sharemystory.howtohunt.com. That's where you get your truth shared, you guys. Get it out. Please, I want to hear on Monday that everybody did something fun this weekend. Something they love to do, I hope. As many people as we can encourage to do that, at least, right? Anyway, I'll be back again tomorrow late after our adventure. Back later.
This way.
Or put your camera back on.
I did. Bobs, come here. One poop. One elk poop. That should be an award right there. Finding one elk poop. Just two? Two pooplets? Oh, bunch in here, eh? Look at them all. That's what I call wintering sign from deer. Look at her pulling right now. Oh, prickle. Look at her pulling on this trail. Okay, Bubs, come here. Come here. Huh? No. This way. Come here. Remember, yeah. Can you tell also there's nothing wintered in here? All these buds are still on. See them? Remember up north, they're all ate. Elk. Come here. Come here. This way. Uh-oh. How deep is it? Use the dog to gauge. You make it. Oh, you got it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm going for it. Don't stop me.